The other day, I was working on this project with my friend, and we worked so hard on this together, and we're so proud of what we created. Have you ever thought about what it would be like creating a project together with someone and then have the opportunity to send it up into space? There are people's jobs to plan, design, test, and build spacecraft that eventually will get to be sent up into space. What they work on here on Earth has the opportunity to actually leave our planet and make a difference. Who would do this for their job? Why is this even important? Find out what STEM career I am describing in this episode of the STEM Career Quest. Have you ever found yourself asking this question? What do I want to be when I grow up? Maybe you already have an answer to that. Maybe you don't. Both are okay. Welcome to the STEM Career Quest podcast, a show made for kids like you to help you build your dreams or even find new ones in science, technology, engineering, and math. Each week, hear captivating stories and interviews to explore the exciting world of STEM. Oh, and grown-ups and teachers, you can listen too. We'll talk to experts in STEM who are passionate about what they do in the real world and how they make a positive impact in their careers. Created and hosted by K-5 STEM coach Naomi Meredith, this show will spark your imagination and passions. Join us each week on our quest to explore the possibilities of careers in STEM, one episode at a time. The STEM career that we're going to be learning more about is what it is like being an aerospace engineer, with the role of being a deep space and missile senior manager. Aerospace engineers design, develop, and test different types of aircraft, spacecraft, missiles, and satellites. It's not all of those things at once, and it really depends on where the person is working and what type of project they are assigned to. To tell us all about it, we are going to be hearing from our special guest, Scott Shepard. Even as a kid, Scott loved all things space. When he was a child, you would be able to catch him watching and reading all types of science fiction and even building with Lego bricks. He always thought that he would be an astronaut, but his life and pathway and experiences led him in a different direction that is still involved in all things space and some really cool projects about deep space as an aerospace engineer. So excited for you to meet Scott and all of the cool things that he does in his STEM job. Now, get ready for today's episode quest, my lovely questies. As you listen to this episode, listen carefully to find the answers to these 3 questions. At the end of the episode, I will be revealing the answers. Question number 1. True or false? Is controlling a flying spacecraft like playing a video game with a joystick? Question number 2. Who does Scott get to sometimes meet at his job? And question number 3. What caused a problem with one of the spacecraft that Scott and his team were working on? Be a careful listener. Now let's jump into the episode. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for being here. We appreciate you having you on the STEM Career Quest podcast. And if you wouldn't mind, what STEM career do you do and how would you describe it?
So I'm an aerospace engineer, and pretty much what that means is that I get to work on, build, and then fly spaceships. So mostly satellites that go around the Earth is mainly what we do, but we also do a lot of deep space. We call them deep space, but deep space really means anything that's not a satellite that orbits Earth. So things that go to Mars, some things that go to Jupiter, like the Hubble telescope is one of those that gets to, you see lots of pictures from the Hubble telescope of different galaxies and nebula and everything. So that's some of what we do too. So just everything space.
That is so amazing. And it's pretty cool because there's a lot of jobs in space where you don't necessarily have to be an astronaut. There's all the other things that go behind the scenes to make all those things happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So most of the people that I work with are not astronauts. A lot of people are space enthusiasts, though. They just always love space or they love astronauts. We do have astronauts come by every now and then, actually, which is pretty cool. Uh, I don't know how much everybody knows that what the capsule that's going to the moon recently is going to be called, but it's the Orion capsule. And the astronauts are going to be flying in the next one next year. And they come and check out how we're testing it and make sure that everything's looking good since they're the ones who's going to be flying in it. So that's pretty cool.
That is awesome. Would you ever want to go to space if you had the opportunity?
Yes, absolutely. That's how I got into this. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be involved with space. I always thought it was really cool. And yeah, I would absolutely go to space if I could.
I would not. So I love that you definitely would do it if you had the chance.
Yes.
So with that, you explained some of the things that you do in your really awesome job. What are some other cool things? So diving into that, what are some of the cool things that you get to do?
Really, it's just cool working on spaceships. Like I said, astronauts come by and check out some of the stuff that we work on, and so that's always fun to see. It's a little bit of a celebrity factor with them, but then just being able to work on things, especially with the deep space stuff, like it's things that people hear about and are cool. Everybody gets to see pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope, so to be a part of actually flying that. So where I'm involved is that. I help fly it and point it where it's supposed to point so that scientists can look at the pictures that comes back down. In the news recently, it's been OSIRIS-REx, which is they gathered a sample from an asteroid and then brought it back to Earth, and it just landed a couple months ago. And now scientists are looking at all the rocks that we got back from an asteroid and checking it out, and they're on display in the Smithsonian, which is pretty cool too.
Oh, that is exciting. Your job sounds very hands-on. And when it comes to the flying, is it like a video game where you have a controller where you say, okay, you're going to fly this way? Or does it involve coding? Or how does the flying, the rocket ships kind of go?
Yeah, good question. So no joysticks, unfortunately, though I think that would be pretty cool. I would like to, just grab a joystick and move it around, but no, it's almost all coding. So we have a spaceship, we launch it, and it has software already built in to have it do special things. But then when you need it to point a certain way or fire its rockets at a certain time or move a certain way, or they all have solar arrays. So you have to point the solar arrays at the sun. And sometimes you're in an eclipse, so you have to power down some things. And so we call them command scripts. And so it's a little bit of coding that you type in and you load it up to the spacecraft and tell it what to do.
Is the code pretty immediate? Because I know when you're talking to the rovers on Mars, it takes a while. Is it an immediate, like, does it read the code, understand the code right away, or does it take a certain amount of time for the code to get to the rocket ship?
Yeah, it depends. So it depends how far away it is. Like you said, on Mars or things that are even further than Mars, it takes a long time to get there. So what we do then is usually pre-plan a bunch of stuff
Mm.
because it takes so long to get the commands out to it. Because like Mars, it's several minutes, but we just recently had a spacecraft fly by an asteroid called Dinkinish, and we had commands to tell it where to point to take pictures of it, and that's like a couple hours away.
Oh.
So it's way too long to be able to, type in something and have it do something and then see what happens. It takes hours. So we kind of pre-plan a whole bunch of stuff and then send it a whole bunch of different code all at once, and then it loads it up and runs it automatically after that.
So you have to be pretty confident in your coding skills because
Yes.
you don't get
And
to
there's
see
lots
what
of
happens.
checks. Yeah, and there's lots of people involved. It's not usually just one person. They write something and then send it. You have somebody write it, and then you have somebody review it, and you have somebody test it, and so there's a lot. It's a whole team involved to do something.
So that's important for you guys out there that all of this takes a team. So Scott does really cool stuff, but he has to work with other people and they have to figure it out because there's a lot of different jobs going on.
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually one of the biggest things that we look for people is the ability to work well on a team. Everybody at some point they have all the math classes that they need. They have all the science classes that they need to do the job. But we really look for people who can work on a team and communicate well with other people.
3 things about satellites you may or may not already know. Satellites are anything that orbit one another in space. A satellite can be human-made, like the International Space Station, space telescopes, and GPS satellites. But satellites can be natural objects too. The moon is a natural satellite to Earth because it orbits the Earth. Also, Earth is one of the sun's natural satellites because the Earth orbits the sun. The first satellite that was launched successfully into space was Sputnik 1, created by Russia in 1957. The United States successfully launched their satellite a year later in 1958, the Explorer 1. Since then, there are over 8,000 satellites that are currently orbiting our Earth today. That is a lot to keep track of. Satellites do all sorts of things. They can give us information about our Earth, like its clouds, the air, the water, which is really helpful when predicting the weather. Some satellites take pictures of things that are in space, like stars and planets, then send those pictures back down to Earth. And other satellites are used for communication, like GPS, internet, and cell phone signals. Did you know these 3 things about satellites? Pretty cool, right? Loving the STEM Career Quest podcast and want more? Join the STEM Career Quest Club. Perfect for teachers, homeschool parents, or families looking to add more educational opportunities during school breaks. Inside, you get access to a private community of other STEM Career Quest listeners, comprehension guides for each episode, teaching slides for each episode where it is broken up into chunks so you can listen in smaller segments, related STEM activities you can complete with simple materials, 1 monthly virtual STEM field trip, and more. Join the club at stemcareerquestpodcast.com/club. Absolutely. I love that. Keep it up, kids. Keep talking to your friends. Even if you don't like them, you need to work with them.
Yes, absolutely.
So you've explained so many amazing, amazing things, but is there something in particular, a project or a story or something that sticks out to you that was memorable when you've been in this position?
Yeah, there was one. There's all kinds of great stories, but thinking of one that's particularly interesting just because it's funny. You don't expect to see it, especially working on kind of high tech space stuff. But we had a problem where, so before we launch any kind of spacecraft, we have to test them a lot to make sure that everything works okay. Because once it's in space, there's no working on it again. You can't bring it into the shop and work on your satellite. Yeah. Once it's gone, and it has to work perfect. So we test it a lot. And one of our tests is to make sure that solar arrays open up like they're supposed to. And we have switches to make sure that we know that they do open up because same thing, you can't see what's happening up there. We don't have cameras pointing at everything on the spacecraft. So you send the command to open up a solar array and it opens, and you need some kind of switch to let you know that it opens because you can't see it. And on the ground, we were testing that, and on the ground, you can see that the solar array is open, but the switch wasn't working. It wasn't showing that the solar arrays were open, and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. And eventually figured out it's because there was a bug in the switch. So the switch, it opens up and then it pushes a button and then it closes the electrical connection to to show that you're open, and there was a bug in the way. So it wouldn't close the connection, and we didn't see it trigger that it was open.
That
So cleared out the bug, and it worked.
Well, that's funny because in coding, you have to debug your code.
Right.
And you had a real bug causing a problem.
Right. We had an actual bug and I think that's actually where the term bug comes from. Way back in the day when computers were new, there was an actual bug in the computer that was the problem. So I guess bugs cause lots of problems.
Do you know what kind of bug it was?
It was, yes, I do. It was one of those box elder bugs, like the black with the red, like diamond pattern on the back.
Yeah, that's funny. We have entomologists on the show in another episode, so we'll have to talk to them about that, about those bugs.
Right.
So, thinking about your amazing, cool job, you said you've been interested in space. Are there any experiences that led you into this career or any passions? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, like I said, I always wanted to be in space. When I was a kid, I just loved all things space. The space shuttle was flying a lot when I was a kid. So I just like to watch that on TV and see the space shuttle launch and the astronauts floating around and doing experiments and coming back. I always thought it would be cool to be an astronaut, and I actually looked at it for a long time in my career to be an astronaut, and just different things in life brought me away from Houston area, which is where astronauts are based out of, and living in Colorado. So didn't quite go that route, but I did. I always loved science fiction movies and books as a kid, and so that had a lot of just the sense of adventure and exploration and the unknown out in space. I always thought was cool.
I
I
love
even went
that.
to
And look,
space camp as a kid too.
ooh, that's awesome. I love that. Well, look at you living out your dreams, Scott. You're doing things for space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love it.
That's amazing. So, for any kids out there, whether they love space or they're getting interested in that, what advice do you have for kids who might want to do something similar to what you do?
Yeah, I'd say keep doing anything that you love that's related to space. Like I said, I watched a lot of science fiction and read a lot of science fiction books. So just keep doing that because it keeps you motivated and keeps you excited about space. Doing any kind of STEM work and being part of STEM programs is huge. Math and science, especially math, are the big classes to get involved in and get good at as you're going through school. So that you can go to an engineering program. And that's probably there's lots of jobs in space. You don't have to do engineering, but that's probably one of the more common ways to get into space. And just, if you do like the engineering side, which is what I do, I like to build Legos and just do anything creative where you're creating something and building something, because then you can put that to use as a real job, and you make things that go do something cool in space.
That is awesome advice. And I think a lot of kids out there can definitely connect with those things that you're saying, or they might already be doing those things. So you never know what opportunities are out there when you grow up.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. We appreciate you. And thank you again for being a guest on the STEM Career Quest podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thanks. Awesome. Have you been listening carefully to today's episode, my Questie? Let's go over those answers to today's episode quest. Question number 1 was, true or false? Is controlling a flying spacecraft like playing a video game with a joystick? False. Flying a spacecraft involves a lot of computer coding. No video games involved. Question number 2. Who does Scott get to sometimes meet at his job? Astronauts. They will sometimes come in and check on what Scott and his team are working on. And question number 3. What caused a problem with one of the spacecraft that Scott and his team were working on? There was a real-life bug that was stuck in the switch. Their team had to debug, actually take out the physical bug, in the switch. And what is very funny about this, I don't know if you caught this in the episode, but what is silly about this is in computer coding, when there is a problem in the code, it is called debugging. And that's what their team was doing, but with a real life bug. Need help following along with these questions? Make sure to join the STEM Career Quest Club, where you will have all of these questions listed out for you and more inside the listening comprehension guides, related STEM activities, and a lot of cool things that come out every month. Make sure to check out the link in the show notes. We would love to see you in the club. Loving the STEM Career Quest podcast? Want to be featured on the show? Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and tell us what you love about it. Maybe you'll be featured on our next episode. What is something new that you learned today about being an aerospace engineer? Is this the type of STEM career that you might want to explore more? Even if it isn't, it is still great to learn more about all these different types of STEM careers to help spark your imagination and also learn more about how our world works. So excited for you to continue your journey in STEM here on the STEM Career Quest podcast. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the STEM Career Quest podcast. Grab your free episode badge, connect with today's guest, follow us on social media, join the club, and more. Find it all on our website at stemcareerquestpodcast.com.